Have you contemplated the idea of changing your pricing structure as part of your exit planning? And what I mean by that is moving from an hourly rate or a project-based pricing structure to a subscription model or a membership model where you're charging your clients and you've got a predictable runway of revenue and you know your client retention and your longevity, and it boosts your valuation because of your revenue is smooth and predictable. In this episode, I'm talking to Robbie Kellman Baxter. Robbie is the author of the Membership Economy book. It's a book that's come out quite a few years ago now, but her roots, her history are working with Netflix many years ago to build their subscription and pricing model. And she's worked with a number of other top tier companies as well. High profile consultant in the US, the Membership Economy. In this episode, I quiz her and tap into her wealth of experience about how you can migrate or transition your pricing to a subscription-based model, where it works, where it doesn't work. Let's have a listen, but I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to helping business owners to prepare for exit so you can maximize value and then exit on your terms. This is the Exit Insights podcast presented by Succession Plus. I'm Daryl Bates Brownsword, and today I've got Robbie Kellman Baxter joining us. Robbie is the source, I think, of subscription-based pricing membership models and started way back with Netflix, I think, Robbie. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Look, Robbie's an author and I know I'm late to the party and she authored the book, The Membership Economy, and I read it just this year. And I remember when I was reading it, I was thinking, where was this book? And I know the book was around for years, but why didn't I read this book years ago? And just tracked through how businesses and the whys and wherewithals around how businesses, and what I'm hoping to get into today is service-based businesses. How can they change their pricing model and move away from hourly rate type of pricing, which is just using time as a commodity and just, wearing yourselves out, charging for hours. How can we move to a subscription-based pricing methodology? And what else do you have to do in a service-based business to get the benefits of a subscription-based pricing model? And so I thought, well, what the heck? Let's go to the source. Let's tap into the expert. And Robbie, thanks for agreeing to have a chat with the Exit Insights audience.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Daryl. I'm looking forward to it.
That's brilliant. Robbie, can you start by just giving us a little bit of background? How was there a big aha moment for you when you were working with one of your clients going back a few years that you thought, hang on a sec, we need to change our pricing structure from this to this? How did it all come about for you?
Yeah, so as you said in the very kind introduction, I was working with Netflix, and this is 20 plus years ago. And I just fell in love with their business model. I had been a strategy consultant. I'd been a Silicon Valley product manager. And now I was, consulting to Netflix on some partnership and acquisition strategies. And I just fell in love with what they were doing. And what they were doing, at least from my perspective, was they were helping their customers achieve the outcome in a much better aligned way than any of the other options available to customers at that time. So, if you remember, we used to go to a store to rent a DVD. So you get to the store, you don't know what's available. You wander around aimlessly. You finally find something that's not really what you're in the mood for, bring it home. And then, of course, you forget to bring it back and you have to pay a late fee. And what Netflix did is they said, we are going to provide the widest selection of professionally created video content in the most efficient way possible with cost certainty. A real promise. I call it a forever promise. And they said, and we're going to continue investing in getting closer to fully achieving that promise over time. And in exchange, we're going to ask our customers to pay us a fixed regular monthly price, a subscription. So they earned the right to have subscription by offering a really different type of product, a really different type of service. And I thought, why isn't everyone doing this? Sort of aligning the customer's desired ongoing outcome, the goal they're trying to achieve, the problems they're trying to solve with the product. And that was really where I had my aha moment. And, from there, I haven't looked back.
And so they did it right from the very beginning, didn't they? Because in the UK here, I remember before I came aware of Netflix, there was a company called Love Film. And I just remember thinking, well, we don't have to go down and for me, I can go back further than DVDs, and I went to VHS, and they'd have all these covers, and they'd have on the racks they would have like 10 copies of the video, and then they'd have little card slots in them. They're all out, so it was just a tease, and you couldn't get it. And then, as you say, you'd stroll down and you'd end up picking your second, third, fourth, or even fifth choice, and you wasted 45 minutes, trying to get a video, and you had to drive there and drive back, and you probably picked up a takeaway on the way. And Love Film, I don't know if they copied Netflix or if there is any relationship there, but you had a subscription, you paid your £3, $5 a month, whatever it was. And you could always have three films, and as long as and they were DVDs that you had, and as long as you had them, that you could keep them for 6 weeks if you wanted, but you could have 3 at a time. And as soon as you sent them back, they'd send out the next 3 on your wish list. And it was the key being that they were aware of the problem that they were solving for you as a consumer. Your consumer being you're not getting your first choice, and it's all this time chewed up. So they're saving your time, and that was valuable to the client, wasn't it? And so the client goes, I can see value here, £3, $5 a month, whatever it is, that's worthwhile to me. And as you say, that was like 20 odd years ago. And why weren't more businesses doing it? Well, over those 20 odd years, everyone, well, not quite everyone doing it, but a lot more people are doing it, to the point where we see people now going, we've got to transfer our pricing from a time-based or hourly rate pricing. What do? Well, we're charging our client $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year. Let's just divide it by 12 and we'll call it a subscription. And so I'm guessing you've seen that before, and nothing else changes about their business model.
Right.
And they just go, well, let's divvy it up by 12. And there we go. We've got monthly pricing. We're now a subscription business. But then you talk to the clients and they go, well, hang on a sec. All they're doing is they just charge me monthly, and they're trying to lock me in. It doesn't feel like a fair exchange. So
right.
I'm guessing over the years, this is your area of expertise. You work with businesses to go, how do you make this transition? What else do you have to change in your proposition to your client? Can you still do hourly rate type work, or do you have to have some sort of IP process or proposition that clients are buying? Would love to get your insights of how service type firms can switch to what is really built in hourly rate, to building longevity and certainty and figuring out figure out what their forever promise is.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. So Netflix did it from the beginning, and so they designed the entire model around this forever promise of their customer, and they really aligned the way you pay with what you really want to get, what you're trying to do. I'm trying to have a good time at home and watch some movies. So if you think about a business that has historically been, pay hourly or pay by the deliverable, I fix your toilet, I charge you this month, this much, I create this contract, I charge you that much. What you want to do is get beyond a product focus and really align your pricing with the desired ongoing outcome of your customer. So, maybe I come to you because my toilet is clogged up, but really I want my plumbing to work. That's really what I would like. And, maybe
Absolutely.
I come to my lawyer, right? Maybe I come to my lawyer to look at a particular contract because it's especially high stakes. But really what I would like is to never get myself into legal trouble and to protect myself. So that's really where you start. If you want to have, kind of a subscription, a membership, a retainer, a true retainer-based relationship, is to start there and say, what's the outcome the customer wants? It's probably much bigger than what you've been doing. And it's probably not based on hours. Nobody wants to buy an hour of legal time, right?
Exactly.
They want to mitigate risk.
Yeah.
And so you start there. So when I work with companies, that's where we start. We say, who is your best customer? So that's the first hard question, because especially for organizations that have been around for a while, right? You would say, well, Robbie, we have a lot of customers, and some of them spend a little money and some spend a lot, and some are really profitable, but really demanding and unusual. And some of them are really easy to work with, but they don't pay that much. So we don't know who our best customers are. And that's the place to start, right?
That's a common
what
problem.
Kind of customers do you want more of, where there is a big enough available market segment? Like, what's the segment that you really wish you owned, right? And then you look at that group and you say, what is it that they need from me? And then you start designing. I'll pause for a second there and see if that makes sense.
So if I was to pull together, the first tip there is change your mindset from being transaction focused and just going and doing what is asked of you and just responding or reacting to the client's needs, and get on the front foot and be proactive and going, hey, Mr. Client, I can fix your toilet this time, but I've been here 3 times in the last 6 months. Like, what do we need? We need some sort of ongoing maintenance program to prevent this from happening and keep it all clean. You want clean running plumbing, right? And you don't want to risk those smells and flooding in your bathroom again. Okay, so here's what we can do. How about if I do this for you and I get my mindset around the outcome you're looking for is the first tip you're suggesting we do. And the second aha I pulled out of that, Robbie, was, okay, and then you've also got to segment your client base and just do some analysis on the clients you've worked with and identify what your good clients look like, and then categorize them, and then package something up and approach those and get your messaging right for those clients.
Right. And usually people always say, well, there's lots of good clients. They're all different. So there's a couple of places where a subscription, if you're going to start with your subscription or start with your membership offering, it's often either the ones, like if you have a problem where you say there's a lot of people out there sort of standing on the edge and they're prospects and they haven't joined yet, they haven't invested because a project is too big, then you might optimize around your best prospects who don't make a decision yet. An example of that is Bain & Company, the large global consulting firm. They have something called the NPS Loyalty Forum, Net Promoter System Loyalty Forum. And it's made up of a membership of the senior customer-facing executive. So that might be the head of retail, the head of support, that kind of a role, but quite senior. And it's a monthly or annual membership. They meet periodically. They get data, all kinds of things. It's not project focused. It's not a $3 million intervention. It's, more in the 6 figures, 5 to 6 figures. And what it does is it gives companies a way to build connection and trust with Bain, new people who haven't, worked with them on those 7-figure deals. And it also works to keep the relationship going in between those very large, lumpy projects, right? It kind of gives you a steady drumbeat of connection. So that's one place. It's sort of your light customers. And the other one that Bain does well is their, your ongoing customers between the big moments. So those are some places to look for customers. And then the other place to look is your very best customers that are always pushing the limits. So if you're a doctor, these are the people that are like, I don't care how much it costs. I want you to come to my house, or I want you to be open late, or I want you to give me, I know you don't think I need all the tests, but I want all the tests. I want to give you 21 vials of blood like parsley requires. And I want you to tell me, everything I can do to maximize my healthy minutes, my health span. These people at the very far reaches are often very profitable, but they also often want more than you think, typical professionals in your field would normally provide. And so you can say, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to try to fully solve the problem. In your example of the plumber, right? I don't even know if I would say, I don't want my toilets to clog. I might say, I want everything in my house to just work.
Yeah.
Not just my toilets. I have 3 light bulbs out in my bathroom. I have an issue in the backyard with the irrigation. I have, a hole from where I poked a hole in my wall to put up a painting, and it actually was the wrong place. And now I have this hole. I want somebody to make my house always tip top, and I'll pay a premium. So then the plumber maybe should even go and partner with the electrician and the painter and say, we're going to provide, and the gardener and say, we're going to provide full service, which is if you have a fine home, we're
Yep.
going to make sure it's always enjoyable to live in.
So it's having that ability to think outside of your conditioning. And as lawyers, accountants, we're conditioned to be good lawyers or accountants or plumbers or butchers, candlestick makers, whatever it is we do. We're conditioned and we're trained in our whole training to do our product really well. And it comes back to going, yeah, but it's that old training is sales training tip for you that's been going around for years. No one wants a hole. Why people buy drills all the time? No one wants a hole. They want to hang a picture on their wall, or they want to be able to put they want the outcome of a hole. And so we've got to stop and think around what is it that the client really wants, not what they asked for. What do they really want? And then we've got to think creatively around what do they value. And because some of the things that I've seen is when service providers, they what we're talking about is the annual fee divided by 12. They go, but I'm adding a lot of value. And we've got to switch that around from what you're saying and go, what is it that the client really values? Not what do you value? Because they don't value your time, do they?
No, not at all. And a good example of that is, many of us have worked with executive recruiters, right, to hire top talent. We do not want to pay them hourly, right? We pay them for bringing in the right person who stays for a year, right?
Yep.
And we pay them a lot. And if that means that person is just starting out and they have to spend 400 hours, right, calling people, looking up names, doing research, interviewing, right? I don't necessarily want to pay them more than the person who's like, oh, I know the perfect person. Let me give her a call, or I'm having coffee with her today. Anyway, she meets all your requirements. Not only am I indifferent, I'm not even indifferent to those two options. I actually would say I'd like the second one because it's going to happen tomorrow, right? The first one might work very hard, but it'll take them 3 months to do their research, whereas the expert can do it immediately. So absolutely, people don't, we've conditioned people to think that certain things should be hourly, but really they should be outcome driven. And most people are willing to pay a premium to get to the outcome faster, easier, with more certainty. And honestly, when you ask somebody to pay for an hour, like I have no idea as a consumer how to value that hour. Like, is my lawyer efficient when it takes her 4 hours to write a contract? I mean, I have no idea. If she says, the contract is a $10,000 contract and I'm going to charge you $200 to review it, or even better yet, I'm going to charge you $10,000 a year to review all high stakes contracts. If you need me to rewrite them, that's a different thing, but to review them and make small edits and tell you if it's safe to sign, I'm going to do that at a fixed price to mitigate your risk.
And what I'm hearing here is getting really precise around what you're offering. And I'm reminded around a builder that I once knew. And he said, look, Darryl, what I do is I put a contract for the client to build the house, the extension, whatever it is. And I get really tight on the specification. I go, this extension includes these tiles, these taps, this kitchen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I can put a fixed price on that because I know exactly what the goods cost me and I know how to fit that. It's going to be fine. But what happens, I need to put clauses in there because what happens is I can see what that's going to look like finished. But when clients start to see it taking shape, they change their mind and it's 3 months, 6 months down the track. And then they start going, well, maybe we'll put in this, or maybe we'll need another 2 power points here or light switches there. And so then in that case, the builder said, and that's, he says, I often make a lot of money that way in the variations. And I just tell the client, variations are charged by time and here's the hourly rate. And I can't tell you how many hours it is, but as long as you stick to what we agreed at the beginning, it's a fixed price. I know, you know exactly what you're going to get. And so it sounds like it's the same with I'm doing subscription pricing, because a lot of people are concerned around, losing profit and they think their clients are just going to take advantage of them and just abuse the process. What feedback or encouragement can you give to that type of fear or concern that a client might have?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. First of all, you need to have some confidence about what this service might cost. So what is the variability, especially when a lot of the value that you're providing has real variable costs. So for example, if I am giving you, reviews of your contracts, or I am fixing toilets, I can't do that remotely, and I can't really, there's no economies of scale necessarily
Yeah.
because it's ultimately 1 hour, one person, 1 hour. But if I'm offering templated experiences, or monthly visits, you get an hour and I come through and I know I can fix most things in that time. You get a better ability to manage it. I think when organizations are moving from hourly to fixed fee for anything, you have
Yeah.
to understand what it might cost. And you also have to understand the variability. Even going back to this Netflix example, they did something that other DVD companies and VHS companies were afraid to do, which is they said unlimited movies, right?
Yeah.
So if what happened with Netflix is that you had a 2-week free trial, right? And a lot of people were like, I'm just going to call in sick for the next 2 weeks and just watch every movie I can think of. So it's like 3-day turnaround, right? So I take the 3, watch the first one, put it in the mail. That comes back in 3 days. Take the second one, watch it, put it back in the mail, comes back in 3 days, and keep doing that. So the number of turns, that had real costs, right? It had shipping costs, it had replenishment costs. But they knew really well that after the first 2 weeks or after the first month, behavior, we kind of relaxed into a particular rhythm that was profitable. So they knew if we keep a person for more than, let's say, 2 months, it's profitable. So then they focused on, we only let people in if we think they're going to be staying for 2 months. So they didn't offer a lot of discounts. They were very clear about who their audience was, and who they could serve. And so they could manage it better. They had more confidence. But even so, you might get twice as many movies as me, and you might be in a down a rural road, and it might be harder to deliver to you, but they charge us the same to keep it simple for us. So to summarize, number one, you want to understand what is the range of costs that you might incur for a particular customer, and be willing to have some variability. Number two, you want to minimize the risk on the outside. So for example, you might say, I'm not going to write a contract from scratch. I'm not going to put in any new piping, but I will cover these things, right? So you try to make it easy for them to understand, but also take the big variables out of the membership.
Yeah.
And, if you're actually launching this, what I advise companies to do is you want to test, think about all the risks and test them until you have better answers. So for example, I had a company that I worked with that was in heating and AC HVAC. And they had a system where they could track your home. They could time turning on and turning off your various systems, and they could recognize a problem before the consumer recognized. They could recognize that equipment was on the verge of breaking, and then come in and fix it. And so some of the things that they wanted to figure out was what % of our audience would sign up. And of those people, did they look like the kind of people that would cost a lot to serve? Or did they look like the people that they knew didn't cost a lot to serve? So they could just understand who was going to respond to the offer. They figured all of that out before they did the massive launch.
Yeah.
And so, you might want to, if you are considering this right now, you might say, okay, let's make this available to a few people to see how they use it and how much time it actually takes us to deliver. And maybe let's bind it by time, or bind it by the number of people who can participate. And then once we have more confidence, then we can expand it more broadly. And once we see where the risks are, we can, try to fix those risks.
And I guess with any change, there is uncertainty. And if you're introducing a new, like you use the Netflix example there, people are going to abuse it to begin with, but then they settle into a rhythm. Is that normal behavior that across the board that you can apply that?
Well, so I wouldn't say, I would use different language. There are some people that want to game the system, that want to abuse the system, that are, we always laugh. I do a lot of work with streaming companies, and, we always call it the smash and grab, right? Like you sign up and then you use up all the content, right? You take all the classes, you go to the gym all day, you use every single thing, you use all the soaps and everything, and then you relax. So there are people who abuse, but there are also people who just have pent up demand. right? Like when you first sign up for something, a lot of times it's because you have this pent up demand. You have a lot
Right.
to learn. You have a lot of deferred maintenance. You have a lot of legal questions. It's often, I mean, when you think about what is the moment of acquisition, when does somebody actually start working with you? You know, first time you call a plumber is usually after you bought a new house, right? It's the first time you're a homeowner and you have to handle these things, right? And probably there's a lot of things you want them to do. The first time you call a lawyer might be when you're launching a business, right? Or conducting an important transaction. So yeah, it's going to be heavier early on most of the time. Some organizations get around that by having an onboarding fee or by requiring that the first period that you sign up for is longer than the ongoing period. So for example, when we get our phones, right, most of the telcos require us to pay for the first year and then it goes month to month, or the first 2 years and then it goes month to month. So those are some things that organizations do to kind of get around the risk. And then, keep some things outside the box. But it is true that early periods are usually heavy periods. And by the way, if they're not using it heavily in the first few periods, they're probably not going to use it heavily in the next few periods. And that means they're probably going to cancel, which we haven't talked about at all. But one of the things that also comes up in subscriptions is that people, some people use it a lot, but the ones that aren't using it a lot, they're probably going to cancel. So you need to make sure that they're also getting value.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you got to make sure the clients are getting value, because as with anything, I think a lot of people want their clients to get value. I've heard stories in the past. Well, you got to get it onto a monthly payment because people don't see the monthly payments, and it just goes on and on and on in the background, and they forget about it. I think most small businesses don't want to do that, or a number, whatever number it is, but people, they want to, the service providers that I'm thinking of, they want to deliver value to their clients. They want their clients to value what they're doing, so they will genuinely stay with them long term because they are getting value. So they've got to think that we've got to package something that the clients see as value. So if there is a lot, so you've discussed there's, maybe a lock-in period to begin with. The first 6 months is, and then you go monthly perhaps, or there's an onboarding fee, which is another great idea that people can run with. Are there any other tips or traps for new players moving to subscriptions, Robbie, that that you've seen they need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other things is you want to move away from just, as you said at the very beginning so eloquently, you want to get away from just taking what you've always done and putting subscription pricing on it. I mean, you can do a lot more than hourly service to provide great value to somebody. You can do, regular monitoring or periodic audits or, different products, like, really changing. You can have templates. You can have, online, support. You can have office hours, things that are much more scalable, higher fixed cost, lower variable cost, which will allow you to build that membership, to build that subscription business instead of saying, everybody's hourly, but we charge monthly. You could say, we have all of these other benefits. For example, if you're, providing legal services, you might have regular office hours where lots of small businesses gather at the same time. They can ask their questions. Everybody hears the answer. And that is a different way of providing value that is much more aligned with what subscriptions do really well. Subscriptions usually work best for things that are configurable, not customizable. Right. And so customizable means it's, if you're editing my contract, Daryl and Robbie have a contract and we've been talking for months and it has a lot of quirky details, that might not be as useful for, Lena over there. But if we're having a conversation about best practices in, business development contracts for resellers, that might be interesting to a lot of people.
Okay. And are there any benchmarks or rules of thumb that listeners can apply and go, hey, look, if I move down the subscription model, I want to aim for keeping my clients for what period?
Yeah, people ask this all the time, and it sort of depends on a couple of things, right?
Yep.
It depends on the most important thing is it depends on the industry, and it depends on that forever promise that I talked about earlier. So, for example, if I run let's say like a boot camp for people that want to get into sales, right? Or for not for people who want to get better at sales. And there's lots and lots of these groups out there that are like sales communities where, you work on best practices and you connect with each other and you go on offsites. And what often happens is people sign up for those when they're looking for a new job or when they've just been promoted into a new job. And, I think that that they leave after they've achieved the goal, which is to feel comfortable in my job.
Yeah.
They don't, and the company will say, but it's a forever transaction because if you're in sales, you're always learning and you always need to keep your tools sharp. But
Yeah.
the customer says, that's not how I see it at all. I see it as I was rusty. I came in, I sharpened my tools, and now I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Um,
My
so
confidence is back.
long-winded way of saying, you really want to understand how the customer sees that promise and whether it truly is forever. Another example, YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, people routinely stay well past selling their business, well past retirement. They are no longer young, except maybe, young at heart. But they love the group because that is truly a forever transaction there where people feel really connected with each other, with their leader, and with the larger organization. But that's very rare. Most organizations don't really optimize for forever. They optimize for a finite period of time. Here's a funny example. One time I was giving a speech, I think it was at a Vistage event. And there were lots and lots of business owners. And this one woman owned a business where one of the things that they did was they had a subscription potty training for toddlers. Where they would give you advice and they had a support group that met and she said, people keep canceling after 2 or 3 months. I'm thinking maybe I should go with an annual membership instead. I don't know why people aren't staying. And the whole room just burst into laughter, right? Because obviously if anybody out there has ever tried to, toilet train a toddler, if they're not figuring it out in a few months,
Exactly.
the vast majority of them figure it out in a few months. And if they don't, you have bigger problems, but you're not going to be hanging out in a potty training group.
Yeah.
So make sure that the promise you're making actually does, that you can continue to serve them equally well, if not better, over time.
Well, and I think it's got to be fit for purpose is what I'm hearing there. And by extension, I think what the suggestion is you can't force fit every product or service into a subscription solution. Like there are some things that just don't work in subscription, and there's no point trying to force it because it just won't feel right. The client won't buy it, and 12-month
right.
training.
Well, here's the thing. This is why you really have to take a step back, say, what are my best customers? Why are they here in the first place? And what is it that they really want? And is that path, is that journey that they're on, one, long enough to be worth my time to create a subscription around it? And two, something that a journey I can credibly go on with them for the entire journey or a bigger part. For example, if I sell wedding dresses, if I have a wedding dress store, right? I could, the obvious thing that I could offer as a subscription is a subscription to wedding dresses, like Rent the Runway, but for wedding dresses, right? Most people don't want that, right? They would say, hopefully I'm only going to need one dress, right? And, the ones that get married multiple times are like, well, the second time I didn't really want the full traditional dress, blah, blah, blah. But what people might want, if you say, well, why did you buy the dress? And they're like, because I'm starting a lifetime journey with another person. And if you focus your forever promise on that journey, suddenly all of these opportunities open up, and your current product offering may not be a perfect fit. And this is what we were talking about. You may have to add other features and benefits, right? If you said, okay, you know what, instead of just having wedding dress subscription, we're going to offer special occasions. Maybe that's the forever promise, is that when there's a special occasion, you want to look your best. That's what Rent the Runway does. Or it might be, we're actually going to be in the business of helping people have wonderful marriages. And we're going to have, counseling and child rearing tips. And maybe we're going to sell you, children's clothing. Maybe we're going to have financial services for you. Weddings are expensive. But you have to take a step back and say, why did they come to me? What's the bigger goal they have?
Yeah.
And how much more of that bigger goal can I help them with my unique strengths?
Yeah. And we're getting back to because, people don't go in, well, I don't think people go into a wedding thinking that they're going to have 5 more. So, but
Right.
what they might
Do I
want
get a discount? Volume discount?
well, I know one guy and he's had, but anyway, so what we might want is payment terms, which is kind of a subscription, isn't it? So not everything works on subscription. What about those businesses that are already established business and they want to make the transition from, they've gone, okay, so what we're doing at the moment is just transactional and we like to have relationships with our clients and the way we service our clients lends itself that it could be a subscription if they've done the work and they realize that. Have you got any thoughts, Robbie, on how you might communicate that transition period to your existing client base if you're moving from hourly rate or projects or whatever to a subscription type service? How might you communicate that to your clients?
Sure. So the first thing I would advise anyone who's listening to this, who's thinking about moving in this direction, is start by making sure that your team treats customers like members. You don't even need to think about your subscription pricing yet. Just start with that step. And what that looks like is, if everybody had your home phone number, would that be comfortable for you? If every customer had your home phone number, it's like for the doctors out there, when you have a doctor in the family and you're at a, birthday party, you're like, I've had this thing. My heart seems to be, sometimes it speeds up and I don't know, should I go? Is that an ER thing? Is that a cardiologist thing? Or is that just normal? Right. And you start to see if I treated every customer like they were a relative, like they were a good friend, like they already had my home phone number, how would that feel? That's the first step. And that starts to give you permission to charge on a subscription basis because you're treating them like they're part of the family, like they're a member. And then let's say that you do some experiments as we discussed, and then you're ready to launch. You have some decisions to make. Are you going to rip the Band-Aid off and say, guess what, everybody, we are now a subscription-based business. It's $1,000 a month. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. Or are you going to say, hey, we have 2 offerings. We continue to offer our hourly service or our deliverables-based service. And we have this new thing designed for this particular audience, which is a much better value if you fit these criteria. So that's a second way of doing it, sort of explain and saying this is for our best customers, right? I saw there was an article today about Ryanair, about the CEO of Ryanair, who's, very bold. They have these, all these extra fees. This is not a subscription business, but they have all of these fees if you don't comply with the rules. If you bring your extra suitcase, suddenly it's $100 or whatever, really expensive if you don't comply with the rules. And he said, people said to him, it seems like you don't care about your customers. And he said, I love my customers. I don't care about people who don't follow the rules though. And if they have a horrible experience and never come back, that's okay. Because we like people who understand how Ryanair works and we're great for them. They love us. So I think that's also really important, is to know who you're serving and communicate. This is for the people who are most engaged with us. So Adobe, software company, when they moved from buy your subscription, buy your software in a box and then you own it and you can use it for the next however long you want, to Creative Cloud, you have to subscribe. They had already done a lot of testing. They knew that there was going to be a small segment that was going to be very, very angry about this change because it was definitely worse for them.
Yeah.
And those were solopreneurs, weekend warriors, people who like to do their, projects on the weekend, wedding invitations and restaurant menus, things like that. They didn't need all the bells and whistles that this new offering had, and they didn't need collaboration, which this new offering had. But the graphic designers who worked in agencies and who worked in large corporations that were really high stakes creative projects loved it. So they said, we serve professionals. If that's not you, we're sorry, but we're not going to be supporting that anymore. But if you're a professional in high stakes graphic design situations, you're going to love this offering. Yeah. So they were super clear. They ripped off the Band-Aid. People were mad. And then their stock price just shot up.
Yeah. So get clear on your client base, get clear on your offering and the market you serve, and be unapologetic. is, yeah, because you can't be everything to all things to all people. It just doesn't work. And
I would even say be honest. I mean, you can be unapologetic, but also be honest. Say, you know what? If I walk into McDonald's with my husband dressed up and I say, it's our 20th anniversary, show us to your finest table and bring me a bottle of your finest champagne, they're not going to feel sad or sorry that they can't serve me, right? They're going to say, we don't really do that. If you want a Big Mac, that's fine. But if you want to go to, I mean, they might be able to make a referral. They might say, if you want to go to a fancy restaurant, there's one up the block. But many of the people that work there might not even be able to make that referral. They might just say, we don't do that here.
Yeah, they're just going to be confused because everyone knows what McDonald's is.
Because they're so clear. They're not all things to all people.
Yeah.
They're really not. They serve, I mean, all of us have probably been there at least once, but they're not all things to all people. And they're optimized for particular use cases and particular people.
So, Robbie, we've covered a lot of ground. You've shared a lot of fantastic advice. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you really think is worth adding to the conversation?
Well, we haven't talked about the impact that subscription revenue has on your valuation as a company when it comes time to sell the business. And I think a lot of organizations, have certainly come to me and said, hey, we're getting ready to sell. We need some subscription revenue so that we look better to potential buyers, right? And by that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about subscriptions is it's not about a quick change. Transitioning your revenue from, product-based, deliverable-based to subscription-based, it takes some time. And also they're paying less per month and you're counting on that long period of relationship. So it doesn't really start to look good for a few years. So what I would say is if this is something that you're thinking about, now is the time to experiment with it. And, to see if you've kind of got the stomach for this kind of investment in the long-term value of your business.
Yeah, thanks. That's a brilliant point. It's like whenever you're working on your business, you're working on the strategic elements of the business, it takes 2 to 3 years to land and really hit your bottom line, your revenue line. So you really are working 12 months plus ahead of your business, but that's where the equity valuation build occurs. So that's a nice way to frame up and end on. And I think that's a fantastic conversation, Robbie.
Oh, it's been fun talking to you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Daryl.
Brilliant. Robbie Kellman Baxter, thanks for sharing your exit insights with us.
A pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Exit Insights podcast. And if you have, now's a good time to subscribe and make sure you get notified of all future episodes. Now, if the topics have raised questions about the value potential in your business or how you will exit like a boss, then contact me and arrange a free strategy call where we can discuss what's required for you. Otherwise, if you'd simply like to learn more about how to prepare for when you want to exit, then you can download a copy of our ebook called It All Begins with Insights. The link is in the show notes. In this book, we'll show you how a business insights report can be used to assess your business to uncover your intangible assets and identify the value potential if you're ready for exit and your business is exit ready.